My name is Tony Peterson, but everyone calls me TP. 8 years ago, I left my high-paying corporate job to start my own business, and it has been a roller coaster ride of success ever since. My wife, Vanessa, has been the primary breadwinner, climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious company for the past 24 years since we got married. She works in the education sector, constantly keeping up with the latest technological advancements and undergoing numerous training sessions each year. Vanessa is a real head-turner. At 46, she doesn't look a day over 30, and she always attracts attention wherever she goes. Standing at 5'8" and weighing just 118 pounds, you'd never guess she's the mother of two. Every morning, she's up at dawn, running 6 miles with her neighborhood running crew. Our daughter Sarah, a 22-year-old FSU graduate, teaches first grade down in Naples and has picked up her mom's running habit. She even enjoys my home-brewed beer and has found a local beer club. I join her when I can. Our son Jake is finishing his last year at UF and wants to join my company, but I've told him he needs to gain at least 5 years of outside experience first. Vanessa despises my brewing hobby and loathes the smell, so I usually time my brewing sessions for when she's away on business trips. She's currently supposed to be in Dallas, which gives me the perfect opportunity to work on a new batch of English brown ale. Life seemed perfect, but I was about to discover just how deceptive appearances can be. One day, I was at the airport to pick up my friend Larry, a fellow member of my beer club, when I noticed some of Vanessa's colleagues from her company. Strangely, Vanessa wasn't with them. I decided to call her office line, something I rarely do, and her voicemail confirmed she was supposed to be in Dallas. This discrepancy puzzled me, so I mentioned it to Larry, who suggested I contact Steve, another beer club member who also happens to be a detective. Before reaching out to Steve, I tried calling Vanessa. She gave me a vague excuse about having to stay behind for work, but it didn't sit right with me. Despite the late hour, I called Steve and laid out my suspicions about Vanessa possibly cheating on me. He agreed to help and recommended a private investigator named Frank Jones to dig deeper into the matter. The next day, Frank called me, and we discussed the situation in detail. He asked if I was certain I wanted to uncover potentially painful truths and how far back he should investigate. Despite the emotional toll, I needed to know if I had been deceived. Frank agreed to have someone in Dallas follow Vanessa while his team looked into her training schedule and contacts. At home, I started my own investigation. I checked Vanessa's dresser, closet, bathroom, and every corner of the house but found nothing suspicious. Frank arrived later with surveillance equipment, and we set up cameras and recorders around the house and in Vanessa's car. We planned to catch her off guard by sabotaging the washing machine, preventing her from immediately washing her clothes when she returned. That night, I could not bring myself to sleep in our bed and instead crashed in Jake's room, tossing and turning with a mind full of worries. The next morning, I stuck to my usual routine and went to the office to clear my head. Around lunchtime, Frank buzzed me, and we planned a rendezvous at my place. He showed up at 2 p.m., arms laden with files. The Dallas detective had come through with a full report, photos included. The plot was thickening, and I braced myself for whatever those files would reveal. Frank handed me a photo of 6 people having a good time at a dinner table, 3 men and 3 women, all paired up. He wanted to know if I recognized anyone. I squinted hard at that picture and, sure enough, recognized Vanessa. He passed me some close-ups, and after a good long look, I told him one of the guys looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Frank's next reveal was straight out of a spy movie. They had cameras set up in the hotel, watching hallways and catching every move. These photos showed the whole group from the dinner leaving the restaurant, cramming into an elevator, and all of them getting off on the same floor. The ladies went into one room, and the guys into another right next door. Come Friday morning, there was a snapshot of 2 women leaving one room, 2 men the other, and then all of them breezing through the lobby and out the door. They looked like colleagues or maybe old pals. Nothing shady. After hitting up a nearby restaurant, they all settled their own tabs and headed back to the hotel to grab their stuff and check out. Frank was looking at me like he was about to drop a bombshell, asking if I was dead sure I wanted the full Monty. Without skipping a beat, I told him to lay it on me. He had another file, and as he walked me through it, the Dallas crew had gone into those rooms with the cleaners, filming the whole 9 yards. Here's the kicker. Those 2 rooms were connected. They swiped the sheets for DNA, collected used glasses for prints, and dug through the trash. I was bracing myself for whatever those tests were going to say. The waiting was the hardest part, knowing that these bits and pieces could piece together a picture of Vanessa I never wanted to see. The Dallas PI gave us the rundown. Those hotel rooms were a mess, a clear sign of a wild night. We're talking about all 4 beds used and stained, the air thick with the scent of sex. We're waiting on lab tests to confirm the details, but in my gut, I already knew Vanessa was more than just a bystander. It felt like a punch to the gut, realizing the woman I married could betray me like this. So what's next? Vanessa's coming home tonight, and first things first, we've got to sabotage the washing machine. That's our move to keep her from washing away any evidence. It felt kind of good getting my hands dirty, cutting the wire, a distraction maybe to cool the boiling anger. Back in the kitchen, Frank's getting DNA samples. Mine, the kids. And he's digging through Vanessa's hairbrush. When he asks for hair from the kids, a chill runs down my spine. Could it be? He's just crossing off items on a checklist, but the thought of my kids not being mine, that's another level of betrayal. We've got baby hair clippings saved up. One from each kid should do the trick. Frank's got another plan. Nab Vanessa's luggage at the airport. Buy us some time with her bag missing. She'll be late, wrapped up in reporting it. That gives me space to get my head straight, and then the real act begins. Can I hug her, kiss her, sit through her stories like nothing's wrong? Can I take her out, sleep with her, all while knowing what I know? It's a performance that might need to last months while Frank's team does their thing, unraveling Vanessa's secrets. Could I pull it off? Could I keep up this charade, living with the lies just to uncover the truth? I told Frank, yes, I have to. The truth is the only thing that matters now, no matter how long it takes or how much it hurts. Frank's mind was already working out a plan. He suggested that I go on a business trip to throw Vanessa off and potentially catch her in the act, if she was indeed cheating. The idea struck me like a lightning bolt. I could visit a longtime client in St. Louis and tell Vanessa I'd be gone from Monday to Thursday. It would sound perfectly routine. Why the trip? I asked. Frank explained that my absence might make Vanessa feel more relaxed and careless, especially if she had been having an affair. Since we didn't have any surveillance in her office, Frank wanted to bug something she always had with her. I racked my brain until it clicked. Her briefcase. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Frank handed me a tiny bug to plant. That night, as Frank was leaving, he gave me one last task. Check Vanessa's underwear for any signs of infidelity. Stay cool, he reminded me. I was trying, but it felt like walking a tightrope. Out on the deck, nursing a porter, I tried to piece together anything else that might have been off about Vanessa. Aside from her meticulous laundry routine, nothing came to mind. Just as I was about to head in, Frank called to say they'd intercepted Vanessa's luggage. It was off to the lab. Remember, keep your head, he said, and that's what I clung to as I prepared for the evening's performance. Vanessa arrived home, clearly exhausted from her trip and angry about the lost luggage, especially a couple of pairs of new slacks. But she still found the energy for a loving embrace and the usual "I missed you" routine. Once she went upstairs for her bath, I secured the bug in her briefcase and tried to relax with some TV. My mind, however, kept replaying her arrival, searching for any clues that might give her away. She seemed genuinely happy to be home, which only made my act feel even more strained. I had to improve my deception game, or she'd read me like an open book. Pushing those thoughts aside, I got ready for bed, where we ended up tangled in each other's arms, the usual post-trip ritual. Saturday morning, Vanessa was out cold, probably because she wasn't stressing over laundry duty thanks to the missing luggage. There I was, sneaking a peek at her panties like some kind of pervert, hunting for any signs of infidelity. Nothing stood out. They looked just like any other day's laundry. After my own shower, I started the coffee and grabbed the paper, trying to keep things normal. Vanessa floated into the kitchen, all smiles and well-rested, and I laid on the charm, offering her coffee and breakfast. She joked about her luggage, and I forced myself to laugh along. With breakfast done, I stepped outside to chip away at my to-do list. A while later, Vanessa popped out, heading to the store, and I told her I'd be busy with the beer transfer. It's all about maintaining the usual routine, even when everything feels like it's hanging by a thread. Dinner at our usual Italian spot felt like a scene from a movie where the lead characters are pretending everything's normal. We chatted about her trip, my upcoming St. Louis run, and the lost luggage, which she half hoped would stay lost just for the excuse to shop for more, except for those new slacks she liked. I played my part, talking up my latest homebrew venture. After dinner, it was like any other evening before a business trip. The drive to St. Louis was my time to think, and while I usually ponder over business matters, this time Vanessa was the only thing on my mind. I checked in with Frank from the road, updating him on the weekend and trying to get a read on his thoughts. No news yet, but he promised to keep in touch as the miles and hours slipped by. I needed to hear Frank's unvarnished take. He didn't sugarcoat it. He and Joe in Dallas both figured Vanessa was in deep, likely for years. It wasn't just a one-time thing. These people knew each other too well. Their casual demeanor, the way they handled themselves, it all pointed to a long-standing affair. Frank said that outside those hotel rooms, the six of them were just friends. But once the doors closed, it was a different story. They knew how to keep up appearances, and that's what stung the most. It was a long-term act, and I was none the wiser. The last bit of advice from Frank was to make a call, decide what I was going to do about Vanessa and this whole mess. That's when I reached out to my lawyer, Mike, for the contact details of the best divorce attorney around. I brought him up to speed, and he said Dave Ford would be in touch. It's strange how life can take a turn. One day, you're sharing homebrew and dinner plans, and the next, you're talking to divorce lawyers about the end of a marriage you once thought was bulletproof. I called Mike Davidson, my attorney, and asked him for the name of the best divorce attorney in the state. I gave him a brief update, and he told me he would have Dave Ford call me. Checked into my hotel in St. Louis, I made the routine call home to Vanessa, letting her know I landed safely. Everything seemed normal, but beneath the surface, I was arranging the pieces of a different game. I touched base with Fred about our golf plans, trying to maintain the ordinary pattern of a business trip. Frank rang me up later that night, checking in. I let him know that his and Dave Ford's reputation preceded them, and that I was gearing up for whatever came next. This was no longer a defensive play. I was ready to take the field. The next day was a blur of green fairways with Fred, a temporary escape. Frank's midday call on Wednesday found me with an open schedule, ready to head back home the following morning. When Dave Ford, the attorney, and I finally spoke, I briefed him on the situation. He commended the strategy and acknowledged Frank's investigative prowess. The big question from Dave was about my intentions, and I laid it out plainly. If Vanessa's cheating, I'm filing for divorce. Yet, I needed the full picture from Frank's investigation to measure just how far I wanted to push back against Vanessa and her clandestine group. Dave laid out the legal landscape, explaining a no-fault divorce could be swift and less costly in Georgia, especially since our kids were grown. Adultery charges wouldn't really leverage any advantage. It was a lot to process. I needed time to weigh my options on how to approach the divorce, to decide whether to strike hard or take the path of least resistance. The conversation with Dave was a stark reminder of the legal and emotional maze I was about to navigate. With the unexpected arrival of Frank and Steve at my hotel room, I knew something major was up. Frank's expression was grave as he prepared to deliver the news, and having Steve there suddenly felt like a necessity, a lifeline. When Frank broke the silence, the words hit like a freight train. The lab results were in, and they confirmed Vanessa's active role in that sordid hotel scene. It was damning. Each woman, including Vanessa, had been with all three men. My heart sank as Frank explained they matched the DNA from Vanessa's hair to the evidence on the beds. I was reeling, lost in a silence that was deafening, my mind racing as I struggled to wrap my head around the betrayal. But it was the next revelation that cut the deepest. Frank's voice was hesitant as he told me that neither of my kids were biologically mine. The scream that tore from my throat was more than shock. It was 24 years of trust, love, and memories shattering in an instant. As I stood there pacing and raging, I was barely aware of Frank and Steve's presence. My perfect world didn't just collapse, it was obliterated. What was I supposed to do now? Every plan, every next step seemed pointless against the backdrop of a lie that spanned more than 2 decades. Struck by disbelief and battered by the storm of betrayal, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. The revelation about Jake and Sarah and Vanessa's decades-long deceit was more than just bad news. It was a seismic shift in everything I thought I knew about my life. The shock gave way to a cascade of feelings, from the initial disbelief to a cold, hard resolve. Frank was right to deliver this news in person, and Steve's presence was not just for support, it was a necessary anchor to keep me grounded in the quiet aftermath of the storm. Time felt like it stood still as Steve, Frank, and I laid out my options. With their guidance, I focused on a path forward, determined to ensure that this betrayal would come at a steep price for everyone involved. Sleep was a distant stranger that night, but their presence kept me grounded, preventing me from drowning in despair. My decision became clear. I would make sure each person involved in this deception paid dearly. My divorce from Vanessa wouldn't be a quiet retreat. It would be a public revelation of her betrayal. Though it would drag my own pain into the light, it would expose the years of lies that had defined my life. In Georgia, a no-fault divorce seemed like an easy way to sever ties, but now it felt too quiet, too gentle for the magnitude of Vanessa's betrayal. The simple process of filing, waiting a month, and then dividing what we once shared seemed inadequate. The evidence we were gathering would support a different kind of ending, one where the truth wouldn't be concealed under the guise of mutual consent, but laid bare for all to witness. Confronted with the reality of Vanessa's infidelity, I was torn between the satisfaction of a drawn-out court battle and the pragmatic approach of a no-fault divorce. The raw desire to confront Vanessa and her accomplices in court clashed with the advice of Steve, Frank, and Dave, who all recommended the latter. It was a strategy promising efficiency and less financial strain. The prospect of saving time and money while still exposing Vanessa's infidelity gradually won me over. Back in Atlanta, we regrouped in Frank's conference room, laying out the intel we had, identifying what we still needed, and strategizing the most impactful form of retribution. I discovered that Vanessa hadn't slipped up during my St. Louis trip, but the past behavior of the Gang of Six was a different story. Their pattern of booking connecting rooms, the various combinations of members attending these getaways, it was a systematic betrayal. My frustration boiled over at the thought of their deception. I demanded Frank dig deeper into their lives. I needed comprehensive profiles, marital status, children, paternity, employment, residence. The plan was forming to dismantle the facade of their secret lives as thoroughly as they had deconstructed mine. This wasn't just about legal retribution anymore. It was about exposing a charade that had lasted nearly a quarter of a century. A wild idea took shape in my mind. Reveal Vanessa's cheating right on our 25th wedding anniversary. Frank, knowing her work schedule, was setting up a surveillance operation to catch her. While it wouldn't hold up in court, I needed to know the truth for myself. The perfect time for the big reveal was approaching. A class Vanessa was teaching in Orlando ending right before our anniversary. I informed everyone that's when I dropped the bombshell. It was going to be our anniversary, but not the kind you celebrate with cake. This was a game changer for me. No more playing the clueless husband. It was time to show Vanessa and her affair buddies what happens when you mess with me. I was ready to turn the tables and make them feel the pain they had caused. Update. Frank just gave us the latest information in Dave's office, and it's like something out of a soap opera. The Gang of Six, Vanessa and her co-workers, have been sneaking around for over 20 years since they all started at their company. They've perfected their secret lives down to an art. Recently, they had a work class in Washington, D.C., and Frank's team uncovered their devious plan. Vanessa and a guy named Henry had rooms next to each other. They were incredibly slick about it, never giving anyone a reason to suspect anything. They spread out across the hotel, ensuring they weren't seen entering each other's rooms. During the day, they acted like regular co-workers, but at night, they'd sneak off to their secret rooms. They only did it late at night, sneaking back to their own rooms before anyone was up, except on specific nights like Saturdays and Thursdays. Their act was convincing. During the day, they'd talk about mundane topics, where they were staying, what they were eating, their kids, their spouses. No one would ever guess these were the same people engaging in secret trysts at night. They had been playing this game for 24 years, hiding everything right under everyone's noses. Frank's team, working with the hotel's cleaning service, collected the necessary evidence. The aftermath of the encounters in those connecting rooms provided a wealth of DNA evidence. The bed sheets, saturated with the DNA of the Gang of Six, and the personal belongings left behind, painted an undeniable picture. George and Chuck's unwitting paternity of Emily and Kent was confirmed, their genetic markers unmistakably present in the collected evidence. The reality of their actions, once hidden in secrecy, was now laid bare in the most indisputable manner. George C. Thomas, residing in Richmond, Virginia, with his wife and 2 adult children, was about to have his life turned upside down by the revelation of his additional daughter. Similarly, Chuck in Columbia, South Carolina, enjoying a steadfast marriage with his high school sweetheart, was on the verge of being shocked by the discovery of his extra son. Henry, with his twins in Little Rock, Arkansas, Joyce, approaching her silver anniversary in Miami, Florida, and Catherine's family in Knoxville, Tennessee. All of their seemingly content lives mirrored the hollow perfection of my own before the truth came to light. The Gang of Six had everyone fooled for over 23 years, pretending they were happily married, but their little act was about to crash and burn. Seeing my own life fall apart was just a sneak peek of the mess that was about to hit them. Things were getting more complicated by the minute. Now we were questioning who really fathered Joyce's and Catherine's kids. Chances were high that the dads were part of their secret club. Frank was racing against the clock to dig up the truth, needing answers before next Wednesday. In Dave's office, the air was thick with revelations. It turned out Vanessa's business trip to Orlando was just a prelude to our anniversary, and she didn't care one bit about the 25 years we had been married. My initial shock was swiftly followed by a cold, hard focus on the reality of our relationships. Henry, it turned out, was the father of Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son, while George and Chuck had fathered Catherine's daughters. Joyce remained the only one to have a child by her husband, a single thread of fidelity in an otherwise tangled narrative of infidelity. After absorbing all this information, I started to feel a cold determination. Pretending to be the loving husband while planning Vanessa's downfall was like playing a dark game. I had gone through all the sadness and anger, and now I was all about being strategic. Just a little longer, and I could drop the bombshell. It was twisted, acting like everything was fine, mirroring Vanessa's own deception. She had kept up her act for 24 years, so I figured I could keep mine going for a few months. I was never the type to play this kind of game, but now it felt like payback time. Frank's crew was preparing for surveillance in San Diego, but my focus was on Orlando. That's where I'd show everyone what Vanessa and her gang of six had been up to. Her choosing to stay there instead of coming home for our anniversary showed how little she cared. The plan for Orlando was bold. I'd surprise everyone by showing up as the instructor on Wednesday and let the truth out in front of everyone. Dave and his team were preparing the legal groundwork for the big day. As it approached, Dave, Frank, Steve, and I reviewed everything, ensuring we had every angle covered. Frank's team would be there, monitoring the gang of six for any last-minute developments. I was gearing up for the showdown. This wasn't just about exposing Vanessa and her friends. It was about making a big statement. I was about to step up and change everything, and they had no idea what was coming. Update. On Saturday, after Vanessa left, I called up the spouses of her gang of six. I devised an elaborate cover story to invite the spouses of Vanessa's co-conspirators to Orlando. I told them I was planning a surprise 25th wedding anniversary celebration and wanted them to be part of it. I arranged their flights and accommodations, insisting it was my treat. Next, I told Kent and Emily to come to Orlando as well, under the guise of surprising their mom. When they arrived, I sat them down and dropped the bombshell about Vanessa's affair and the fact that I wasn't their biological father. It was a gut-wrenching conversation filled with tears and hugs. They had many questions, and I answered them all honestly. I made them promise not to reveal anything to Vanessa. Kent, choking back tears, asked if I could ever forgive Vanessa. Emily, desperately trying to make sense of everything, suggested we try counseling. I took a deep breath and asked them to put themselves in my shoes. To imagine the person they loved most had been lying to them for their entire lives. I wanted them to grasp why forgiveness was impossible for me. Ultimately, I told them it was their choice to be present when I confronted Vanessa, but I assured them my love for them would never change. I asked them to imagine a perfect life with their family, like a scene from an idyllic movie, where everything was just right: a great job, wonderful kids, family vacations, soccer practices. I then asked them to picture a different kind of movie, where their spouse was in a hotel room, not with them but with other people, engaging in heartbreaking betrayals. I painted a vivid picture of their spouse being thrilled for reasons that would devastate them. I turned to Kent and asked, "Would you believe your wife truly loved you?" To Emily I said, How would you feel if your husband was one of the men in that room?" Their eyes filled with tears as they grappled with the scenario. I let the gravity of the situation sink in before continuing. Then I revealed the harshest truth. This wasn't a one-time affair. It had been ongoing for 24 years, occurring 4 times a year. I even had videos to prove it. I told them, right now, not even a mile from here, they're likely filming another one of those scenes. I asked how they would feel if they discovered they weren't the biological parent to their kids, or if Emily's husband had fathered children with someone else. It was a tough reality for them to process. I explained that the person they believed loved them was skipping family time to spend extra days with these people. It wasn't just about the cheating, it was about a whole hidden life. I described how their mom would extend her trips for these rendezvous and then need a day to recover before rejoining the family. "What kind of love, respect, and care does that show for her family?" I asked. Vanessa's actions had deeply wounded all of us. Kent, struggling to hold back his tears, admitted he hadn't seen it that way before. He realized he wouldn't want to be treated like that by his wife and acknowledged the immense pain it had caused me. "I love you, Dad," he said, still unsure if he could face the confrontation. Emily, however, was resolute. She was angry and ready to support me, telling Kent that he needed to stand by us too. "Mom chose them over us," she said, making everything click for Kent. I was moved by her passion and determination and felt an overwhelming love for both of my kids. Emily was eager to know the plan for the next day, so I explained about inviting the Gang of Six's spouses, who believed they were attending a celebration of our 25th wedding anniversary. It was going to be a shock for them, and I intended to reveal all the evidence. "By the way," I added, "you've got some half-siblings you might want to meet someday." I wanted Vanessa's affair to be exposed in the most impactful way, forcing her and her friends to face the consequences directly from their own families. Final update: the other spouses from the Gang of Six arrived at the hotel, and we had a cordial lunch getting to know each other. Then, at 2 p.m., with Kent by my side, we headed to where Vanessa's class was taking place. Waiting for us in the hotel lobby were a lawyer from Dave's firm, a private investigator from Frank's team, and a videographer to document everything. At 2:30, a florist delivered the 25 red roses I had ordered. Emily and the other women admired them, but I could see Emily was ready for action. I had to remind her to stay calm because I was orchestrating how this was going to unfold. We moved towards the meeting rooms at 2:45. Emily was eager, Kent stayed close to her, and the other spouses buzzed with anticipation. I walked into Vanessa's classroom at 3 p.m. with the roses and the videographer trailing me. Vanessa's face flushed red when she saw me. I cracked a joke about it, and the room chuckled. Vanessa forced a smile and introduced me to the class as her loving husband. Standing in front of the class, I locked eyes with each member of the Gang of Six, who were strategically spread out to avoid suspicion. Turning back to Vanessa, I began my speech about making the day memorable because of our upcoming 25th wedding anniversary. Before I could finish, Emily and the rest of the surprise group burst into the room. The photographer captured the exact moment, the shock on Vanessa's face and the sheer panic on her affair partners' faces. I couldn't help but smile as I watched the scene unfold. Emily, fueled by righteous anger, took charge, introducing Vanessa to the spouses of her affair partners. I continued with my announcement, mentioning the upcoming company anniversary, making sure to highlight that Vanessa and her colleagues had all started around the same time. I orchestrated the scene like a director setting up a grand finale. John was there with his camera, capturing every single moment. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. The Gang of Six looked completely bewildered and terrified, just as I had hoped. "George, Henry, Chuck, Joyce, Catherine, please come up and join us," I called out. They hesitated but made their way to the front of the room, trying to appear composed while the rest of the class clapped, unaware of the real reason for their presence. Emily stood beside me, her face a mix of determination and anticipation. Taking Emily by the arm, I guided her to George. "Emily, meet George Thomas, your biological father." Vanessa's face turned ghostly white, and George's wife stared at me in disbelief, demanding that I repeat what I had just said. "George is Emily's biological father," I said again, this time louder and more deliberate. George, visibly shaken, asked how I could be certain. The attorney standing by handed me a folder. I took out 3 documents and handed the first one to George. "This is a request for a court-ordered paternity test," I explained. Then I handed him the second document stating, "I'm suing you for 21 years of back child support and emotional damages." Finally, I gave him the third document. "This is a lawsuit against your employer for failing to enforce the morality clause in your contract. I already have DNA results from an independent lab confirming your biological connection to Emily. The court-ordered test is just a formality." I turned to George's wife and added, "I have copies of all the evidence for you to use as you see fit." The room exploded into chaos. The other spouses, previously unaware of the real reason for the gathering, were in shock. I felt a grim satisfaction as Kent stepped forward, standing tall and nodding in acknowledgement. We moved on to Chuck, and I repeated the process. "Kent, meet your biological father, Charles Kent Nixon." The room fell into an uneasy silence when they heard Chuck's middle name. The attorney handed me another set of documents, and I went through them with Chuck just as I had with George. Chuck's wife also requested copies of the evidence. The initial shock had settled, and most people thought the drama was just about Vanessa and her 2 kids. But I had a bigger reveal planned for the rest of them. With Vanessa sobbing uncontrollably, I called for everyone's attention again. "This is not what you expected when I walked in, but hang on, we're just getting started." The room fell silent as I laid everything bare. I exposed the Gang of 6 and their 24-year history of infidelity during business trips. I detailed the parentage of all the children involved, leaving no doubt about the web of lies and deceit that had been spun over the years. The room erupted into pandemonium as the reality of the situation hit home. I handed out all the legal documents, ensuring the spouses had copies. The Gang of 6 had nowhere to hide. When I handed Vanessa the divorce papers, I made it clear that we were done. No calls, no visits, no attempts to reconcile. After everything had settled down, and I returned to my hotel room, I reflected on how things had played out. Emily had disrupted my carefully laid plans by wanting to confront her biological father immediately. My script was thrown out the window, but it didn't matter. I had exposed the Gang of 6, humiliated them publicly, and the truth was out. It was a hard, painful day, but it marked the beginning of closing a long, difficult chapter of my life. After serving them with legal papers and leaving them to face their furious partners, I began to feel a sense of relief. Then, a knock on my door brought me face to face with Emily and Kent. They had been supporting their mother, but now they were here with me, offering hugs and words of encouragement. Emily, though hurt and angry, displayed a newfound strength. She told me she was taking Vanessa home for a while. Despite everything, she felt a responsibility to her mother. Emily's strength and resolve were new to me. She was determined and fiery, and I knew Vanessa would be in capable hands with her. Kent, sharing his pain and love, asked to ride back with me, seeking some normalcy amidst the chaos. As Emily left to be with her mother, assuring me of her love, Kent stayed, and we shared a few beers, a father and son trying to navigate new territory. Update. It's been 5 years since the Gang of 6 was exposed, and their world came crashing down. They all lost their jobs and went through messy divorces. It seems like they're perpetually trying to escape their past. Every time they find a decent job, their history catches up with them, and they're back at square one. They're working on repairing their relationships with their kids, but it's a long, uphill battle. Their exes want nothing to do with them, except for the occasional financial support. After everything went down, I couldn't stay in our old house with all its painful memories. I checked into a hotel and started looking for a new place to call home. Kent returned to Atlanta with me but didn't stay long. He's thriving in Dallas, climbing the career ladder and enjoying life, though he keeps his distance from Vanessa, only speaking to her occasionally. Emily stays more in touch with him, and they chat often. The fallout from the Gang of 6 has been toughest on the kids. Trust issues linger, and I wonder if Kent will ever settle down. Emily has been dealing with Vanessa in her own way, refusing to accept any excuses or lies. We've all found support in others who have gone through similar experiences. The kids have even bonded with their half-siblings, and we're planning a reunion in Nashville soon. It turns out Emily and Kent's names connect back to their biological fathers, which only added to the shock when everything came out. Their relationship with Vanessa is strained at best. As for me, I've moved on from Vanessa. We settled our divorce quickly. She got the house, and I secured trusts for Emily and Kent with the money from George and Chuck. I didn't want their money, but I wanted them to feel the consequences of their actions. I've been dating, hoping to find someone new to share my life with. I still believe in love and look forward to the day I'll have grandkids to spoil. Life doesn't stop for anyone, and despite the pain, you have to keep moving forward. Emily and Kent needed me, and I needed to be there for them. Life goes on, and so do I, looking forward to whatever comes next and always remembering that cheating never leads to anything good. Payback really is a, well,